What's going on, everybody? My name is Tenebrous Infinite, and welcome back to Generation Zero. For today, it's finally time, my dudes. I finally have my Vanguard build finished, finalized, and specialized. This build is going to be one of the best combat builds that you can build for yourself in this game. It's not only immune to ticks, it's immune to area gas, not enemy gas, but area gas, and it can take hits like no other. I've spent a long time building this class, so let's just start talking about it. So outside of your boy sitting here sipping on pink juice, there's a couple things to talk about when it comes to this Vanguard build. This is actually my third iteration of building a Vanguard here in Generation Zero, which is why it's taken, geez, how long now? What is that, like 4 months now since I made the engineer video? It's taken a while, my dudes, but that's mostly because I spent a lot of time practicing around with the skills, seeing how the skills interact with one another, and using that to kind of come up with the best Vanguard. So my first iteration of Vanguard, I focused way too much on my damage dealing potential and didn't wind up focusing on any of the other utility aspects of the character, and that wound up really hurting the character in the long run. Then with my second iteration, I was like, okay, maybe just focusing on damage isn't the best route for a Vanguard, so I decided to build a kind of stealthy Vanguard that was designed for flanking and taking on enemies kind of in like a bit of a rush after having like a strong first hit. And that Vanguard build just wasn't really living up to its fullest potential in my opinion. And then I came across this wacky combination of skills that we'll be talking about in a second here, and it's had some of the best results in this game. So one of the main things about this Vanguard is that I wanted to make sure that his skills were balanced enough that he wasn't just entirely designed for combat, but also could serve a lot of utility cases, i.e. being able to store a bunch of stuff, being able to move quickly from place to place, while still being able to handle combat in the fullest. And so for some of the skills here, we'll just kind of go over them really quickly, and then we'll have a little bit of video footage to talk over. So for the combat, again, as I said, I wanted to make sure that this guy was capable of dealing with robots efficiently, but in the end, I had to kind of focus on one or the other skill trees for maxing them out. So, of course, I went with the Vanguard skill tree and pumped most of my skill points into this skill tree. The skill tree winds up with a couple very useful things, being the armor perk and then the Vanguard specialization down at the bottom for how you're able to deal with incoming attacks. So we'll talk about why I've only got 2 out of 3 spots for this armor here and now. So with this armor perk, it's really funny and really finicky. But essentially what I did was I got the 10% bullet resistance and 10% explosive damage resistance, and just left it at that, because I found that when I was getting the third perk from the armor skill tree, it would wind up overwriting the invulnerability to ticks that this class has. So, so the way that I became invulnerable to ticks was really kind of strange, but worked out in absolute favor here. So all you gotta do is get the steady feet resistance and get the Vanguard perk, and the combination of those two perks will wind up making you immune to ticks. The thing is as I said, if you wind up getting the third level of armor here, it seems to overwrite the whole tick thing. So what I decided was, because I'm not able to get that 10% gas damage resistance from my armor perk here, I just wind up getting it over here in the tech tree. So in the end, that makes the character still invulnerable to location-based gas, so that's gas that you're going to find in bunkers and in the occasional house, depending on the set piece. So, yeah, definitely what you want to do is you want to go through this skill tree, kind of max out the things that you want to max out, but don't max out the armor perk. And once you've gotten the Vanguard perk, immediately go for the steady feet so that way you can get your resistance to the ticks as soon as possible. So then outside of that, I decided to give my character the full trigger happy boost, because a lot of times my character will be running at an enemy and firing kind of in full auto. And outside of the trigger happy giving me a boost to my full auto damage, I figured it would be good to get the armor damage and the component damage perks maxed out. It does mean that I had to waste 2 skill points to get to the component damage, but in the end I find the component damage is very, very useful, especially when you're combining it with the trigger happy perk. A lot of times you can kind of just spray and pray the robot and you'll wind up destroying a whole bunch of components and doing a lot more damage to the enemy that way through destroying the components, as opposed to just hitting them with a ton of bullets. So then outside of that, I got the maximum weapon recoil perk here, and that's simply just to keep my character as accurate as possible while I am firing in full auto and while I am kind of spraying most of the enemies in the game. And then outside of that, for the other skills that I got, I decided to focus on stamina and running speed over stamina recovery. And that's simply because I had to pick one perk here between the running speed and the stamina recharge, and I just felt that the running speed was more useful to the character. And then again, maxing out the carrying capacity just to further improve the utility of the character overall. So all in all, a much shorter talk. Oh, dude. Of course. just had to start storming the moment I started recording the clip. Alright, so that was a quick little skill talk there, but essentially those skills that I highlight and outline for you dudes are the most important skills, and just avoiding that third armor perk is incredibly useful for the whole tick thing. Now, results may potentially vary. You guys might find this Vanguard build to be more effective or less effective depending on the outcome of things for you. But for me, this Vanguard is a super awesome character. And so the way it kind of goes now is I've got like an ebb and flow between my Vanguard and my Engineer build. And my Engineer will go off and farm up the resources that the Vanguard needs, and the Vanguard will go out, burn up all the resources, and fight tons and tons of robots. So let's go off. I'll kind of show you guys the whole tick and vulnerability thing, even though I've already shown it before. And then we'll also show off the gas and vulnerability thing. And then we'll do a little bit of a damage comparison. Alright, so we found ourselves a tick. Let's go in here and kind of prove the whole tick and vulnerability thing. Just gonna walk up to this guy, all nice and casually. What's up, dude? Hey, little guy. Just gonna crab walk over that way? Sure. Jump on my face. There we go. Look at this. Literally does not hurt me at all. And the proof of him not causing literally any damage to me at all is also the fact that he can't knock me out of these little poses and emotes. That the emote will get broken even if you wind up getting 0 points of damage. So it's almost like these guys do less than 0 damage to you when you've got your skills lined out like I do. We're off at U-turn so that way I can show you guys how the gas resistant works with this character. Just gonna have to kill a couple doggos on our way here. Alright, and we got one dog just around the corner here. There we go. And there's a bit of gas in that corner, but it's not a great example. Let's get down into the absolute thick of the gas down here, so that y'all can see this gas does not damage me at all. I am completely immune to it. And that comes from the Vanguard perk plus the gas resistance perk. All you need is 10% gas resistance plus the 25% general resistance that you get with the Vanguard in order to become immune to gas. So when I had found this out by utilizing the armor skill, I thought, hey, it would be kind of cool if you could then stack your gas resistance even further here and be resistant to the enemy gas, but it's not the case. So if you do build a Vanguard, there is no way to get yourself resistant to the grenade launchers that the hunters use, or the general gas attacks that the Fenix harvesters and tanks use. So I figured, hey, with this version, I'll get the best of both worlds. I'll get a Vanguard that can resist these area-based gases, but still will have that tick resistance to them. Let's wrap up this final doggo here before we move on. Jeez, man. That exploded a bit more than I expected. So next up, I'm going to show you guys how the character deals with explosions, because even though we got exploded in the last clip, I don't think that that was a good enough example. So we're going to run over to this tank, kind of piss him off, and see if we can get some rocket salvos going on here. So the thing to keep in mind with this Vanguard is that you aren't immortal, so you can't survive a full rocket salvo from an enemy, but you can survive most of it. You could survive a decent, like, 50% of the rocket salvo, I'd say. Oh, he totally missed us with that. We also deal with the bullet shots much better, so we'll show those off too. Okay, so as you saw, took a lot of health out of us, but that explosion happened literally right behind us. So, yeah. Oh, hey, we got 2 tanks. So, yeah, the Vanguard is just really good for dealing with all sorts of incoming damage, whether or not it's explosion damage or machine gun fire. I don't think I'm going to take both of the machine guns at the same time, but there you go. As you could see, just small little chunks of health, as opposed to the massive amounts of health that you can actually have taken out of you with those big-ass machine guns that they have. So, I don't think that I really need to show the other characters, because the other characters just wind up dying from these attacks. So, yeah, the Vanguard is incredibly useful when it comes to surviving all sorts of incoming damage. hacker skill, eat your heart out. But really, actually, you can utilize the damage resistance from the Vanguard to set up some great scenarios like that, where you're able to just have one of the other enemies do a lot of the heavy lifting for you when it comes to damaging these robots. As you saw, though, in that quick little clip, the ticks still can be pretty irritating and can shove you around to where you don't want to go. So it's not like you have to, or you're able to completely ignore ticks. You're just able to ignore them up to like 95% of the time. Other times it'll be a little bit useful to actually shoot off the tech pod just so that you can focus on what you want to focus on. So don't mind the appalling state of my inventory right now. That's simply due to the fact that after grinding up my character, I pretty much immediately started making this video here. But so the weapon loadout, which is the main thing to focus on for the Vanguard, is a very tight and really focused loadout. Basically, I carry the Automatyavar 5, the Capist, the Herkvist, and the 44 Magnus. So sometimes I'll also carry the Messer for him, and maybe the 50 cal, depending on whether or not I want to have a long distance option on the character. But most of the time, I'll kind of keep things together with this really tight, really focused, close combat build style of weapon loadout. So there we go, a pretty quick little video here just talking about how I use my skills to make myself invulnerable to ticks, how I made myself immune to area-based gas, and then just a little bit of an example of how efficient this guy is in combat, because this Vanguard build just wrecks house. The combination of the armor damage, plus the component damage, plus the accuracy, plus the fact that you could take all the shit that they throw at you, just makes this build one of the best combat-based builds for Generation Zero. And as I said, if you use this in tandem with my previous engineer build, you will wind up with an incredibly comfortable, smooth experience here in Generation Zero. But that wraps up this video here about Vanguards and stuff. If any of you guys have a specific build that you want to see, throw it up down in the comments and I'll see if I can get around to it. And if you guys have a Vanguard build of your own that you've maybe made differently in comparison to what I've made here, again, sound off down in the comments. I love hearing your guys' feedback, your guys' opinions, and all of that stuff. Y'all know I do. So thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Until then, peace.